Welcome everybody back to the Financial Advisors Workshop here at Four Star Wealth. We have a very interesting gentleman to speak with today, learning about how to be a great financial advisor. We have Jeremy Keil. Jeremy is, it's called New Berlin, Wisconsin, but let's call it Milwaukee, right, Jeremy?
Close enough. Yeah, we're about 5 hours from Milwaukee, so let's just call it that.
Okay, and we're down in Chicago, so we love Milwaukee. We go to Milwaukee quite often, so we're big fans. Mm-hmm. And many Chicagoans spend lots of time in Wisconsin. That's like the America's vacation land.
Exactly.
Wisconsin. So anyway, well, great. Well, welcome to the Financial Advisors Workshop, Jeremy. You've had a very interesting career. We've learned about how you started with Thrivent and got through training through them, and then you've developed through there. You're still with the Thrivent group, but you really developed an independent program. Let's talk a little bit about that.
Sure. Yeah, I started with Thrivent about 19 years ago, and great place to work, great place to help out and learn from people and help out people. I'm just somebody that has a really passion for helping a specific group of people and reaching out to that specific group of people. And when you're part of a bigger national kind of firm, that's tougher to do. And so I was looking to have more of an independent firm. And thankfully, Thrivent started the advisor network, the Thrivent Advisor Network. So it's a platform I can be associated with, but run my own practice, run my own business, and reach out to people I'm trying to reach in the way I want to do that.
Yes, that sounds great. You know, we had talked earlier. We have a connection. I used to be a customer of, and you worked at Joseph Banks, and Joseph Banks was great training. Teach folks all about good selling suits, and and kind of that's how you kind of learn the selling world. You've been involved in some political campaigns as well. That's selling too.
Oh my goodness, yeah.
So, how did those experiences shape how you became a financial advisor?
Sure. Well, I started my college career as a math major, switched over to physics, and my aunt worked at Thrivent, and she said, "Hey, you're good at math and you sell suits at Joseph Bank. You should become a financial advisor." And she was right on. I absolutely loved the congruence of math and helping people out. And I guess I hate the idea of the word sales anymore now, because we're more advisors than salespeople. But hey, you got to get somebody to say yes. If you have a great process for helping people out, that means nothing if you can't get them to commit to that process. So there you go. It's been a nice combination.
So as an advisor, you're not really selling a product or an IPO or something, but you're selling a service, right?
Right. You're selling your process, and that's what we focus on. I'm a retirement-focused financial advisor. We've got a 5-step retirement income plan that we help take people through, and people buy into that. And for us, focusing solely on retirement, that's one of the biggest financial decisions of your life. A lot of those decisions you can make one time and you can't change. Like you sign your pension paperwork, you wait a couple of weeks after it's done, you can't change it ever for the rest of your life. So you got to have a very well thought out process on how do you go about making financial decisions. And that's what we do. Exactly.
Well, and so when you start your practice, how did you find clients? Like who did you initially call besides your close friends?
Yeah, you talked about kind of growing up in the industry through a bigger firm, and same here too. And for me, I just try to be as valuable as I could be to the other advisors in the office. And I went out and got all my designations, the CHFC, CLU, CFP. I got those exactly as early as you can. You've got to have 2 years experience to have the CHFC. So I finished it before that. You need to have 3 years to get the CFP. I finished it before that. I got the CFA, did not hit it in the 4-year mark, but I hit that maybe about year 6. That's a tougher one.
It is.
Yeah. So I would network with the advisors and try to add value to them. If I learned something from the designations I was pursuing, I would share it with the other advisors. And next thing I know, I'm part of their client meetings, because they would find people that would match up with that. I remember a couple ideas. One of them had to do with something called net unrealized appreciation. And I talked around with a few other advisors. This is like 2004 or 5. No one else had ever heard of this. That the idea that you could take stock out of your 401k, change the tax situation and benefit the client. Well, I started sharing it with other advisors. Next thing I know, whenever they ran into it, they were bringing me in on the cases and helping them with their clients.
And you became the expert on NUA.
In the area, yeah, as far as I could tell, I was talking about it before anyone else was, at least in Milwaukee and at least within Thrivent circles.
That's great. That's a great strategy. Absolutely. Well, good. So now that you were originally training with Thrivent, are you still in a Thrivent office or no? You're independent.
Yeah, we're independent financial advisors. We just use Thrivent's platform. They have the Thrivent Advisor Network. We do have our insurance licenses, and so that's completely independent. You're connected directly to an insurance carrier every time you have to help a client with maybe a different insurance carrier. You get connected that way, and it's fun. We've got our website, keilfp.com is our website, and I spent a lot of time understanding who the people are we're serving and kind of designing it to add value to those people. I'll tell you an exercise I did about 3 or 4 years ago when I was creating the independent firm is I went through all the clients I had met in the prior 10 years. And a lot of times people say, oh, look at your client segments in terms of, their age and their wealth and things like that. What I did is I looked at their age when they became a client of ours. Mm-hmm. And what I discovered is basically people became clients at the age of 54 and 62. And relatively speaking, a little outliers, but 54, the people that are coming to us then, their kids just got out of college and they were freaking out because all of a sudden they realized they only had about 10 years left till their own retirement. They spent 25, 30 years raising kids. Now it's time to focus on yourself. So they needed some guidance there. The 62-year-olds were coming to us because they're retiring like next week, next month, next year. And so it's interesting. You almost had two lanes of here's why the people were coming into us. And so we made sure that we were focusing, how do we help out one group of people? How do we help out the other group of people? Very similar process, but you're just kind of tweaking it to those those main ways that people are reaching out to us.
Do you ever reach out to people in their 20s and 30s, or do you ever come across them?
If we do, it's maybe some people coming online and finding us, or it's the kids of clients. And that's just not our expertise. I intentionally don't know too much at all about student loans and things along those lines because I'm using that brain power on Social Security and taxation and that net unrealized appreciation, things like that. So when people reach out to us with that situation, even the kids of clients will usually suggest there's a couple advisors that I know and trust in the area and say, hey, here's a few, go check them out. And they'll give you a better ability because that's what they focus on is the questions you have, you want to find people that can answer them. Absolutely.
Now we talked a little bit in our pre-discussion about niche marketing, finding a group of people that you like and serving them well. So tell us about your niche. What is your niche?
Yeah, I'd say the first thing is just find a group of people you want to be useful to and go out and be useful to them. Another way that I approach it is the 3 words: brand, message, and market. Brand is who you are and who you serve. Message is how you speak with the people you serve. And market is how do you find the people you serve. So for us, we do retirement planning. We have stumbled upon and become more expertful in a few companies like We Energies, Harley Davidson, AT&T, Abbott and Abby. Those are some of the main companies that you run into one, you discover all the nuances, and then that person starts referring you to others. And next thing you know, you've got a handful, you've got a set of clients that you can be really valuable to in that area. So that's who we're serving. People, I would say it's people that are preparing for retirement that are charitably minded and also happen to work for a public company, because now you have these stock decisions we're very good at. You have these pension decisions. A lot of people still have pensions. You wouldn't know it, but a lot of 60-year-olds still have pensions, and these are huge $1 million decisions they need help making. That's what we do.
Sure. What kind of work do you do with company stock?
So the company stock, there's all kinds of things. So we've run into people that do have the stock options, and so lot less of the incentive stock options these days. But all the different types of stock options, you want to evaluate the tax consequences on it. I'll just tell you real quick on stock options. It seems like here's a typical thing. You have a stock, you have this option to buy it sometime in the next 10 years. you don't own the stock. You own the option. And let's just say it's a company like Abbott or AbbVie that kicks out a dividend. We Energies kicks out a dividend. You never get that dividend if you have the option. And so we find people generally wait the entire 10 years and then they just kind of cash it out as soon as possible.
Right.
Because that's just the easiest, quickest way to get some cash. If you happen to exercise that option, now, of course, this is not financial advice, but I'm just giving you an idea. If you happen to get that option today and exercise it today, instead of having the option for the next 10 years, you have the stock for the next 10 years, and you'll get the dividend for the next 10 years, if there is a dividend. And then if you say, I need the cash 10 years from now, you're cashing out stock that you had bought 9 or 10 years earlier. That's a long-term capital gain. It's not the short-term income that just shows up because you held on to the option. So, there's reasons they have options. There's reasons to exercise them. But I think so many people just don't realize that. You hold the option for 10 years, you missed out on 10 years of dividends, and you're cashing out at income tax rates compared to buying it today, selling it later on at long-term gains rates.
Yes. Excellent. Excellent. Are there any other ways to shelter gains like that?
Yeah, the other big one is this thing called net unrealized appreciation I talked about. And it's just the idea, you see it less and less, but a lot of people that have been around a company for a long time still have them. And I do see it a lot with the Abbott and AbbVie and with We Energies especially too. You bought the stock way back when for $10. It's worth $100 now. Those are just fake numbers. But if you kept the money in the 401k or switch that stock to an IRA, you'll end up eventually paying taxes on the $100. But if you pull that stock out, and you got to meet all the rules, all kinds of rules, figure it out, talk to an expert first. But if you pull that, let's just say you have one share, you pull out that $100, you're only going to pay taxes on the $10 that I talked about. That's your cost basis. Right. The other 90 is net, 100 minus 10, that's a net amount. It's unrealized because you haven't sold it yet. And it's appreciation because it grew. So that's net unrealized appreciation. And it's a way to pull the individual stock out of your 401k. Yeah, there's a bunch of rules you got to meet, look into them, and just change the tax situation. And the two biggest tax situations is that net unrealized appreciation. You can flip it from ordinary income taxes to long-term gains. Mm-hmm. And also too, let's say you love the stock. That $100, you keep it in your 401k or the traditional IRA, and it grows at $200 later on. All that growth ends up being, that $100 of growth ends up being income taxes still. It passes on to your kids. It's still income taxes. But that $100 stock that you took out, the one share stock we're using as an example, it becomes a $200 stock later on, and you die. That $100 gain, that's, at least right now, they haven't changed it yet. That's a step up in cost basis. That gain, that $100 gets wiped out. Your prior $90 a gain that I'm using for example, that'll never get wiped out, and you got to pay the taxes on that. But hey, if you're going to keep the stock outside of the 401k, outside of the IRA, that money can be eligible for the step up in cost basis. Nice.
Have you ever looked at opportunity zones? Is that an option that you bring to people as well?
That's something I haven't really looked at that piece of it yet. But hey, if you're an expert, let me know. I'd be happy to look into it with somebody who's an expert.
Yeah, and that's the next gen of that. So if there is a big capital gain, which is better than a income, you need opportunity zones for that as well.
Okay, great.
So that'd be a great idea. Well, great. So many of your clients do those kinds of things, and they're corporate executives of these different companies that are somewhere near Milwaukee. And Northwestern Mutual is in Milwaukee as well, isn't it? They're a big player in that market. Yeah,
and it's interesting. I have a good number of clients that actually work in corporate Northwestern Mutual. I think sometimes they want to separate their personal business from their corporate life, but it just shows the power of learning the different ideas. It's so interesting where a lot of places I see this most often in Northwestern Mutual, where the pension there maxes out at 60. And so a lot of these people still have pensions, and it's kind of like, why are you working there after the age of 60? So because you work an extra month, it doesn't give you anything extra. But even then, if that's the tendency you see, we still very much encourage. I was just on another podcast just on Monday, a couple of days ago, I was recording that. I said, you should always get the summary plan description. You should always get a few different scenarios on the pension, even if it's the 100th person you've talked to from that same company, because that might have changed. The pension might have changed, or they might have been hired in a union service unit that's different from the other unit that you had helped out with. They might be a corporate plan that changed in 2007 and they got hired like the month before the other person you just talked to. And it's two different things. You should always get the summary plan description of the 401k, the summary plan description of the pension. You should always run personalized pension projections for each person you talk to make blanket statements. And my apologies if I did previously. I was just giving blanket ideas, but the process should always be the same. Get these bits of information and then make a decision on how you can maximize those different things.
Yes. Well, you mentioned that you were on a podcast. Now, that is your podcast. Is that right?
Well, I've got my own podcast, Retirement Revealed. We're helping people make great retirement decisions, whether they work with us or not. And we bring on a lot of guests to talk about things. Right now, we've got Medicare as a focus for 3 or 4 episodes. We've brought on some people to talk about long-term care and aging. We had a former governor of Wisconsin on. That was a great show. He's been dealing and taking care of his wife for the last 18 years, who's been suffering from Alzheimer's. So he wrote a book about it. He's got a great perspective that I don't have on an issue that a lot of people are most likely going to face. So it's been fun to bring that to people through the podcast.
Which governor is that?
Marty Schreiber. So he was a governor about 40 years ago, 1980 or so. He's got a book about it. I'll send you the link. So that's a book that you ought to look in if you've got any connection to Alzheimer's, dementia. Just the humor and the stories that he has that are just so impactful. And a lot of people, I've seen him talk in big groups, and a lot of people just that have had that experience, they just grab onto that, and he understands them because he's been living it, he's just able to give people a different perspective on how you approach a very trying time.
And we can get a link to your podcast as well.
Absolutely. Yep. I'll make a note. We'll do that.
All right. So how does your podcast help as you develop your market, your niche market, and the other market?
Yeah, I'd say a couple of things it helps out with. Not as many people are saying, "Hey, I heard you on the podcast, completely fresh, and I want to work with you." That happens, but it's a small number. What's more impactful, kind of from a business standpoint, is it's not just myself, but it's another advisor, John. We have another person, Brad, who helps connect with prospects. We're looking to hire a third advisor right now. What helps is that when I say something, we've got the same message throughout the entire organization because they listen to the podcast and can learn from things. And then we're using the same language. People like consistency, and you'd hate to have a client or prospect call into your office and get a different answer from the person that answers the phone to the owner, to the other advisor. Come up with the answer. Like, what's the way that you're going to approach it from your group, and use the same language and use the same process. So that's helpful, keeping everyone on the same page. But it's also helpful too. Brad's maybe talking to a prospective client. John's talking to a client, and they have a question on Medicare or long-term care, insurance taxation, or estate planning. It's really easy for them to just pull up the podcast that talks about it, and there you go, sends them out the info. Instead of them having to go research for 30 minutes to an hour to say, okay, here's the answer to the question, this and that. Hey, it's already done. We've already gone through, we've talked with an expert on the show, or I've done the research, and now we can make use of that more than just myself and the 50 or so clients that I'm talking to on a daily basis.
So in some ways, your podcast is good information, but it's also essentially like a record. Like, let's go back to the podcast. What did we say? Make sure we're all on the page, right?
Exactly. That's exactly it.
Very interesting. Very interesting. And you say you don't get too many new clients through it, but it reinforces what you say to other clients and your team's message as well.
Exactly. Yep. That's exactly. And it's part of the process. People that reach out to us, or somehow we reach out to them, they can listen to a few of our podcasts before we even have a meeting, and they'll have a good idea of what we do. And they'll have a good idea if they want to work with us. And if they don't want to work with us, a lot easier for them to figure that out through listening to a podcast on their drive into the office than, driving into our office and spending an hour and realizing that what we offer is not what they're looking for, and vice versa. Saves us some time too, I suppose.
Yeah. So Jeremy, you see a lot of investors. What's the biggest mistake you see people making when they're doing their financial planning, or are they just not doing financial planning?
Thinking of two of them, the biggest mistake I'd say is they don't have a reasonable process of how they make decisions. Like we focus on retirement decisions, so we have a retirement decision making process. You can check it out, 5stepretirement.com. It's right there. We go through and tell you here's the way we go approach things. And there's 5 videos you'll see. I'll just talk through it for about 3 or 4 minutes in each video of, okay, step 1, we're approaching it this way. Step 2, we're approaching it that way. But having a process for making decisions is something few advisors have, and definitely not too many clients have. I'd say that's one of the big mistakes. The other one is people get so focused on one specific risk, they forget that there's any other risk in the world. Like there's a lot of risks out there. There's inflation risk. There's stock market risk. There's your own longevity risk. How long might you live? Your taxes might change. So some people might hear, hey, Roth IRA is a good idea. Let's throw all the money in the Roth IRA. Well, your taxes might change. You focused on one risk and you forgot the other one. Or, oh my goodness, the market's going to drop. Let's put all the money in the bank. Okay, well, you're protected in case the market drops. It's usually up. So you're betting against history, or I'm so focused on inflation right now. Let's do everything in case of inflation hits. Wonderful. What if it doesn't? You've got to just balance all these different risks that are out there. And if you focus on one of them exclusively, you're going to hurt yourself, because chances are if there's more than one risk in the world, and there is, let's just say there's 5 risks. There's 5 risks out there, and all you focus on is one, just using this random math, like 80% of the time you're wrong. Focus on all of them and try to make sure you're going to do well if any of these risks go up or down.
So in your retirement planning program, it includes kind of listing of all the different risks to make sure you don't forget them.
Right.
Yeah.
That's exactly it. Yeah. And I'll tell you, one of the big risks people don't like to think about and they don't plan for is that somebody is going to become widowed. Like chances are the husband's a couple years older than the wife. That's kind of happens normally. Chances are the women are going to live a couple years longer than the men. So you look at it and you run the odds, like chances are this wife is going to be a widow for 4, 5, 6 years. And you need to plan for that and make decisions when you're 62 that are going to help her out when she's 92. So you got to think of that. That's probably the most vulnerable financial time of your life. And most 62-year-olds are ignoring it. And we say the 92-year-old women are living on the decisions of their 62-year-old husband that were made 30 years ago. Let's take a look at it now, because we can kind of forward project out. This is likely to happen. Let's see how it might affect you.
Nice. Well, it sounds like you have a great practice, great methodology, and a focus on how to help people, and really a focus on a certain group of people and others, which is really great. And that is such a great way of doing business, and you do insurance as well. It's all very exciting. So we really appreciate Jeremy, you being a guest on the Financial Advisor Workshop podcast, and we hope we can have you back on for another return visit at some point.
I would love it, Brian. Yeah.
What's going on? And again, so thanks again for being with us. Thanks everybody for being with Jeremy and me on the 4-Star Financial Advisor Workshop. We'll leave it there for today.
Thanks, Brian.
Thank you.